All right, well, welcome back to another Bennett Breakdown. This is Travis Bennett speaking here, and obviously you know that, but great to have on the show today, Your Honor, the mayor of the Yellow City of Amarillo, Texas, which we all love.
Man, we love that. Yellow Rose of Texas.
The Yellow Rose of Texas.
If I say that enough, I think it'll come back around.
Absolutely. Are you bringing it back?
I'm trying.
Well, good. Yeah, we are the Yellow Rose of Texas. People.
We are.
And the song and all that. But it's just as we were talking just a while ago, there's a few things coming out of graduation. There's always young people walk up to me. I don't know how many graduation parties you went to, but I went to a handful. And now I need to go back and shoot some horses so I can make some money that I gave away. Little folding money. But one of the things they always ask is, what would you tell your 18-year-old self? Before we kind of get into some hot topics, I want to ask you, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Now that you reminded me that I still need to get a few of those checks mailed on those invites that I got.
Yes.
I appreciate that. That's such a good starter question. And I think it's good because, in my 20s, I knew everything, right? I knew it all.
10 foot tall and bulletproof.
And everyone just needed to sit down and give me a minute to tell you, all the stuff that I'd already figured out, right? Mm-hmm. In my 30s, I figured out I knew nothing. Man, I don't know one thing. And what I've been doing is screwing a lot of stuff up. And then in my 40s, I think now I'm kind of coming back to, okay, I have enough life experience to look back and reflect and realize, okay, I do have something to offer. I'm starting to identify with my gifts. I do have these abilities, but in the humbleness and the humility of, well, any strength left unchecked becomes a weakness, and so you are looking for that balance. And then why don't you tell me where you're at first? Let me try to learn from you, and if I can help, I'd love to. So what I would tell my 18-year-old self, 100%, like if you can get yourself out of the optics of what everything looks like, what everyone else says, what everyone else may think. Mm-hmm. And so, Romans 12:2 would have been really good for me at 18, be not conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed. So be yourself and get comfortable in who you are, and then be willing to stand out. Don't conform, don't comply, don't go along to get along, and then own it. And that confidence that comes from all of that, the humility that comes from that too, because when you really get comfortable with yourself, what you're saying is I'm okay if you see how weak I am, and I'm okay if you see how unprepared or unprofessional I can be. And at 18, you're supposed to be. Yes. You have that opportunity of, man, you're 18, you're not supposed to know better yet. But from 18 to 25, I spent a lot of time covering up whatever because I wanted to look, I was a really young builder. So, I started my first company at 19. And so I was trying to sell you on the fact that I was an owner. I can do this. And so it was such this, like, I've got to prove myself. Then you take that with a natural type A, overly competitive personality. And it's a pretty bad mixture. And then at 23, 24, we're building houses and, most of my employees are in their 40s or their 50s. And so you're constantly trying to elevate yourself, and that is just the wrong equation. Anytime you're trying to elevate yourself, you're working against yourself. So learning how to be a good leader by becoming a good follower. So, to be a follower of Christ is totally different than just being a Christian. And then if you're bold enough to say, okay, I'm a follower, and I'm not going to follow the pattern of this world, then you got a fighting chance at telling people, like, it's okay, But outside of that, if you take a look at our cell phones and you figure out, like, the Snapchat, the Instagram, selfie is a great way of making everything about yourself. And really you should be the exact opposite.
As you were talking there, that isn't it amazing when you get to 40, it's like, okay, people are now starting to listen to me. Not that they didn't before, but it's like they really take weight in what you have to say. I felt that way in ministry, being young as a youth pastor. But just this thought, it's through Genesis, it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But even if you go before that, you go to Joseph, and you know his story. Joseph, to 20 years old, the Joseph generation, they need to know their identity. Just like you're talking when you're 18 years old, you're like, man, I didn't even really know what I was doing, but I was using my words to cover it up and kind of have a cocky mentality. But then you go into the 20s to 40s, and that's the Jacob, and that's when you increase. From 20 to 40 is when, would you agree, where you increase in finance, you increase in knowledge, you increase in understanding?
I think so. You definitely increase in problems.
Oh,
So
yeah. New levels, new devils.
All your responsibilities increase. Your authority goes along with that, but it's greater levels of responsibility. And so, I love what you're saying. You know, identity precedes purpose. And so, like at 18, what are you being asked?
Yeah.
What's your purpose in life? Well, I don't know. I don't even know who I am. How could I know what I'm supposed to go do? So at 18, I'd tell myself, man, just go figure out who you are. Go learn your identity. Get comfortable in your identity, and then let your purpose figure itself out. You know, I heard a guy say that like he's never going to have a career. He doesn't believe in careers. And I think that's what we tell our youth is like, you need to find a career. Who says? You know, find your identity at that age, and then let your purpose work itself out. And
Be faithful.
Yeah.
Just be faithful in the place that you're at.
Yep, and just walk it. But it's good. I definitely believe that, you know, when I'm 70, somebody's going to ask me, what would you tell your 45-year-old self?
Yeah.
Man, I would tell myself, like, you didn't know enough. You just thought you knew something, like you were still learning. So, like, you know enough right now to know you've got a long way to go, and that nobody has it figured out. That's what's so good, especially on the mayor side. It's very political. It's very professional. It looks like a courtroom in there, you know, and you realize, like, no, it's a lot like high school. It's not that big of a deal.
Is that what you have to tell yourself? It's just kind of, let's get back to the basics, because if you overcomplicate that, I'm sure that it's just just turmoil going on inside your head if you do, right?
Worst thing you can ever do is like watch yourself on a camera. So, you know, you get the prompter and you can see your movements. You can see, now you're told you're self-aware. So, I mean, it'd be like trying to play a baseball game and hit the ball while you're watching yourself swing. Like, you're not focused on the ball at all. You're focused on watching yourself. So the more that I don't watch the news, the more that I don't know what's going on, you know, of what this looks like, the better.
Yeah, all the hate and all that different stuff. And yeah, absolutely. And that's actually definitely one of the questions I wanted to ask you today, of talking about being the mayor, getting away from the personal side of what you would tell your 18-year-old self. What is one of the greatest misconceptions about being in the position that you are over the city?
Well, I'm going to steal a little bit from you because I loved the analogy you used. And those people that know me know that I probably have plenty of analogies that I like to relate things to when I'm trying to communicate. But you were talking about like being the captain of a ship. And as a pastor of a church that needs to make change and grow, you know, it's a balance. If you go too fast, you're going to lose some people over the side. If you go too slow, you can have some people get off and try to swim. And so I think that in this role as an elected representative, one of the biggest issues that you find is you think that, I mean, the biggest misconception for me on my side, looking this direction, is that everybody else knows what I know. Everybody else is involved to the level that I'm in. They all feel the same feelings. They know the passion. They know the vitriol. They know the mess. Really, there's 198,000 people right now that aren't paying attention to anything that I am to the level that I am. There's a couple thousand people in this town that really are, and they see it and they know it, and they're in the mix with me. But
they keep it stirred up.
Well, and they care, and some's very right and some's very wrong, but they're in it, and so you naturally you kind of project that on everybody, that you think everybody is in the same boat, and they're not. And so for me, the misconception on my end is I can get too much into thinking that you guys all know the biggest problem that I had yesterday. So that y'all all know the biggest problem that happened to me yesterday. You really don't. And you have your own big problem. And so it also comes back the other way. The other misconception that I think is the biggest misconception about this job, outside of my actual role, which is totally confused, is that I understand and I know the biggest problem that you're having. And so I don't, and so I have plenty of people that like, well, I already talked to this guy. We already did this. I've been through this, process and it's not working. You need to fix it, and then I would say the role of a mayor is confusing because they're not the same from district to district or town to town. Some mayors get paid and they manage, and that's a position, that's their full-time job. Others are volunteers. They don't get paid and they're not supposed to manage. Mm-hmm. So my goal and role is to be a good board member and to let the city manager manage, and for my leadership to mainly be policy and procedure and vision. And then, I think government in and of itself is totally skewed.
Gosh, yes.
We think the government's there to do. And what we really need, especially in a local community like ours, is we just need the government to get out of the way.
Mm-hmm. And be good leaders.
Provide a foundation.
Sure.
Provide for these services that are basic, core, and then let people be who they are. So you have a protect and a serve on that APD, not a regulate. Down at the city, you have a foundation of a core service, not an inquisition.
Absolutely. And I think a big misconception that people see, I mean, you're a dad, right? Mm-hmm. You're a husband. On top of all those things, I mean, I've been in ministry most of my life, from youth pastor up and now I've been the senior pastor in July, 5 years of this house. And I remember my dad telling me from the very beginning, if you win as a pastor, but you lose as a dad and a husband, you've lost.
Right.
Because you're not being an example. And so I just, how do you keep the balance? Or let me ask you this, what is the routine, the behind the scenes of, because here's the deal, people think that they have this misconception that you sit up in the mayor's quarters and this big mansion. I mean, I guess Hollywood has done this, and over the years, and these painted this picture that is just a facade and it's not it. But you're also running a business. You're doing all of these things. I guess I'm asking to help some people out there that may be in the same position as us, because I run a business. What are the behind the scenes or the routine that you do to keep the ball rolling?
Well, I had a good mentor for many years. He's passed away, but he was a business guy, phenomenal, just very, very wise individual. And so when I went to him originally and said, hey, I think I'm wanting to run, this council place 1 is open and I think it's a fit. I feel like I'm supposed to do it. And he said, well, the best advice he would give me is to keep this in its place. And so, he was in his 70s, and what he had learned was that everything has a place. And you can look biblically.
Sure.
There's a place on the table for bread. There's a place on the table for wine. There's a time for everything, right? And so I think the hardest thing is not letting something get out of place, because once you allow it out of the place that you've set it in your life, and those priorities start to get flipped, then there's no way to balance that according to time. So what you're asking me is a lot of like, man, what does the time look like? How are you a good time manager? And, you got to be on the job site here at 8 o'clock. You got to be here at 10 to run this meeting. And then this thing happened. You had this flood. And so how'd you deal with a disaster, and,
right.
And so those are time management questions. And I'll tell you, the only way you're ever going to be a good time manager, I think, is when you're a good placeholder and when you keep things positionally correct in your life. And that's a lot about what I think the Word, teaches. And I think that's a lot about identity and knowing who you are and then being able to balance that purpose. But, am I the mayor of the city of Amarillo first? I'm not. I'm a citizen of the kingdom first. So my rights come from that citizenship. And then, am I a husband to my beautiful wife? Yes. Like right after, I'm a son of the Most High. And so, am I a father? Yeah, but right after, I'm a good husband to my wife. And if you flip them, anytime you flip them, you're always leaving yourself short. And then, man, we give each other grace, and life teaches us. So you get it out of whack, and you're never going to keep it in its personal or in the spot that you're supposed to have it. So it's a constant game of putting things back to the positional place that they need to have in your life. Now, you asked me, like, what's the routine look like? I get up at 5:50 in the morning, and honestly, the first thing I do is, like, I get down on my face and I stretch, and I breathe and relax, and I pray, and then I read and study. And it takes me right now. It takes, it can take an hour just to get through a topic that I'm trying to learn, and then I can be an hour into emails and catch up from the day before. So a lot of times I don't really get out of the house till 8:30, and I feel like that looks bad, like I'm sleeping in, drinking coffee. I'm not. I'm working.
Yeah.
But I have to get that stuff set aside first, because at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, I can't read that court document. I can't read that
You're
update.
smoked, right?
You're not
fried.
you're not gonna digest it and retain any of it. And so then at 8:30, man, those phone calls have already taken off, and text messages and emails. So
It's when everybody else is waking up.
from 8:30 from 8:30 to 7, you go as hard and as fast as you can. And so right now you skip lunch and you grab a burrito in the drive-through, and you run from this meeting to that, and you're just trying to get to it all. And then around 7 o'clock, you've got to have something that gets you going the right direction. And so it's funny, like, I always enjoyed fitness and health, and I think I wanted to own a gym. Didn't get into that. So
You're still praying about it.
I'm such a bad workout guy. Like, I go put my headphones on and I walk uphill now.
Yeah.
For like 30 minutes
To the courthouse.
and it's just on the treadmill, just letting my mind go numb. And so you totally get out of wherever you're at, and you try to keep that cell phone off to where, well, there's that follow-up text. Like, I'm not looking at it, and somewhere in there you eat dinner and you fall over, there's some other meeting in the evening. And that's where I find myself getting more worn down, is when you're still engaging with people at 9:30 at night.
Yes.
After an event.
That's what I was wondering. Do you have a shut off?
I hit the wall. So,
No, I was just saying, is there a time in the evening where you have a shut off, like no more?
yeah, like, once dinner's done and I get on the couch and like, I'm probably not listening to a lot of what you're saying.
Gotcha.
And then if I can get to sleep by 11, I'm doing good.
Wow.
So
I want to ask you, I know you've been in fitness. Are you a cold plunger? Have you ever done it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. See, so I'm 100%, like, I believe that discomfort is the way to life. So, like, I love hot therapy, extreme, and then cold plunge. So I'm also cheap. So I took my old deep freezer, that I got from Sam's back in 2000, and I pulled all the pizzas and corn dog out and threw them away. And I took my waterproofing material and I waterproofed that thing.
JBS water welded?
Do not, I think it was flex tape.
Okay.
Do not do this at home, and never stick your hand in there or get inside if it's plugged in. I'm just giving you the disclaimer.
Did you do it?
But no, I haven't. I have not electrocuted myself. But, like, you plug it in and you let it run for an hour, and it gets down to about 38, 40 degrees. There's been a couple times I've left it and it's been one solid block of ice. It takes a solid week.
Does it really?
To thaw it out. Yeah, but I will go get in that, and 3-4 minutes is enough.
Better than coffee, isn't it?
Oh, it's great for you.
I'm a cold plunger.
And so breathing.
Yes. Ooh.
Oh, you can't not breathe when you get in that.
And you got to talk yourself into it every single time.
And in the winter, it's worse.
Oh.
You're like, I don't want to do it.
I remember in January on my back porch getting in there, just like
you leave yours outside.
I got it in the garage now, but I had one that was just I was putting ice to it, but in the last month I've converted same deal, deep freezer,
Yeah.
got rid of the bagel bites, and sanded it all down and JB water welded is what I did, and then got some stuff called Pond Shield.
Yeah.
And so I actually have a regulator on it when it goes below or above one,
Oh man,
it kicks on. I'm like all
you're a
in.
high tech redneck.
I'm hillbilly
I
as
mean,
can be, but I tell you what, I can get in there and.
Well,
But
they make these guys too that they filter themselves. I mean, it's
Yes.
like $8,000,
it's big time.
and I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah, me neither. But it is discomfort. That's what it is. Isn't it amazing if we just get ourselves at a place? So many people are in the rocking chair of life, of just going through it. But if you want to go to the full purpose, your new levels come with new
Yeah.
devils, right? And if I can get here, if I can get there here, I can usually. One of the things, did you wrestle growing up?
Not well.
Okay.
But yeah, I got pinned a lot.
But I remember Henry Harmony saying this at the Maverick Club, where the head goes, the body follows.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think about that, where the head goes, the body follows. And if I can get in the right place in my head, just like you said a while ago, of Romans 12, 1 and 2, I beseech you therefore, brother, by the mercy of God, present your body a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable, pleasing unto him. Be ye not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Right.
And think about it. He talks in verse 1 about the body. The second part, he said, this is how you do it. Transformed by the renewing of your mind. And if you can get your mind there, the body will follow. And so there's just something to that. And that's why I wanted to see, because I know what my routine looks like. People's like, how do you balance it? How do you shoe horses? Pastor a church. I've got to have something to always go back on. And that's really today, I wanted, because I get the position that you're in. You said I'm going to use your analogy, it's a fishbowl. And everybody's in the same fishbowl, but some have been there longer, some haven't been there long enough. One likes to eat the flakes, others like to eat live bait. We all have perspectives, maybe because of our history, of how we were brought up. We all see things a little bit differently. Every single one of us. I don't care if you're raised, like in the church still, Baptist, Pentecostal, Church of Christ, and we'll die on the sword for whatever it is. But at the end of the day, can we agree on this, that Jesus died, he was buried, and on the third day he rose again? We may not agree on tongues. We may not agree on healing. But can we agree on this one thing? And so that's the challenge that we have as leaders of putting it out there, to where it kind of fits everybody's mold. And I realize not everybody's. I'm sure you already have people. You promised this, and you said we were going to do that, and you haven't done any of this. So I really want to focus on, like Philippians 4, when Paul is locked up to a guard, by a Praetorian guard, and he writes back to the church of Philippi, the first church that was ever birthed. And 17 times he says in the book of Philippians, joy. He tells them, think on things that are true and noble and, of a good report. Anything that is excellent, think on these things. And the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your heart and guard your mind. And so I want to talk about some wins. I know we could talk about a lot of things. Sanctuary City, some things that may be in the balance to a lot of people. What have you done about the fentanyl? What have you done about the potholes that are on Western?
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, I have grace for it. I totally see it. It's like you can be in one ditch or you can be in the other. There's people that are all wound up. But let's talk about some victories that we've done, or you. Not we, but we've done it together.
No, we've done it, and it's not me, definitely. And I sit on a very, very strong team, and so
I agree.
you can take everything that I'm going to tell you about the city, and you can apply it personally.
Sure.
And what you're talking about when it comes to like the discipline of putting yourself in cold water, overcoming that structure that you're in that constantly wants to be comfortable or feed itself. And having to have that discipline, it's the same thing down at the city in like what's the most important thing? It's that structure and shoring up the integrity of that structure. So, you can relate that to infrastructure and you can relate that to public safety. And so, the structure that we're in right now has this little bitty body of 5 gentlemen right now that set policy and vision, and they're responsible to make sure that the ship's going in the right direction.
Great men.
And they're fantastic men. And I'll tell you, we've all come at it from our own, and we're allowing each other to be who the other one is, and we're not manipulating and forcing and trying to bend everybody around. And so, like, man, if we come to an agreement on something, it's because we all agree. And if we don't get there, then we just disagree and go on. And it's truly the way I think it's supposed to function, and it's very, very healthy. What you see that's not healthy is the structure of the rest of the city staff and the organization in and of itself. And so that's because we've had that leadership position open, when we let go of the former city manager, because we couldn't go the same direction. So, like, multiple times, hey, we want to do this, we need to go here. And well, let me tell you why we can't do that. Let me tell you why we're not going to go there. Well, that's not really the option, And we were elected to do this job, and we want to do it, So for me to do my job, I need you to do your job. And so in that, yesterday, we announced Grayson Path, solid individual, fantastic leader, qualified, good credentials, with the exception of never ran a town this size, So coming from a small venue.
Where'd he come from?
He comes from Paris, Texas.
Okay.
So Paris is probably 30,000 people. And so that's the big criticism, and I get it, and I'm fine with it. I've never done a job that I was qualified to do for the first time.
Sure.
I'd never built a 10,000 square foot building when I built my first one. I'd built a 2,000 square foot building, but the building trade, the practices were the same, the principles are all the same.
You bet.
And so I have a lot of confidence in this gentleman, but that's my biggest victory right now, currently today, coming into today, is council has performed very well in going through this entire process of, let's find the best guy we can to fit Amarillo and its unique perspective. And Amarillo, we are really big, small town minded people. We want to get treated as though we live in a very small town where we know everyone and everyone's important. But we need to function at a 250,000 population volume.
Sure.
And that's who you have driving around in town right now, is 250,000 people. And so this gentleman's going to be a great fit for that. He's very principled, and he's very genuine. And I think what this council needs more than anything is we just need the full truth, and we just need the genuineness of, you don't have to trust me because I'm asking you to. You can trust me because you can see it all. And so the ability to just turn the lights on everywhere, bring everything out in the open, and let's just deal with it, is the vision of this council. And we've done very well with that. Every time we've brought a subject up that everybody else said, well, we don't know if you want to have that conversation in public. Our public has been proven time and time again to say, no, we trust that you guys are going to work it out, and we appreciate that you're going to do it in front of us. And so that's a big win, is getting that.
Well, it keeps
city
integrity,
manager.
right, when you do that.
And it's accountability. The
Sure.
one person I don't trust? Myself.
By yourself.
Like, why would I trust myself?
That's right.
Like, why would I ever make pre-made decisions? Why would I put things in my life that hold me accountable? Well, because I'm smart enough not to trust myself.
Wisdom's found in a multitude of counsel.
And when people are constantly coming to me, Mayor, just trust me in this, or let us, we'll this is our deal, we got this, then it's never worked out. And I don't do that to you as my constituent. I don't do that to my customers.
Sure.
On the job site. And so this is a vision that is the exact opposite of what government has become. Government has become, look, we're only going to tell you what we have to. And we're going to move, and we're going to do our own thing because you put us here. And if you don't like us, then you got to figure out a way to get us out.
Sure.
And that's the big brother picture that everybody has to operate under. But we don't have to do that here locally. And the way we're going to get away from doing that is if we stop caring what it looks like. And if we don't run our program as though we're trying to run a campaign and get elected. So maybe I don't get reelected. Okay. I'll do way less work and deal with less problems. Like, there are worse things in the world. But right now, I have the opportunity to lead and to try to lead in a transparent, honest, upfront way. And so why not do that? Well, because of what it may look like.
Yeah.
Well, so I don't care. And so it may look very unprofessional that we've taken Sanctuary City like a long way around the mountain 3 or 4 times now. But it's principled in the fact that everybody gets an opportunity to speak. And everybody has their own opinion, and it may not be valid. It may be so personal that it's not helpful to the group. But at the risk of staying here till midnight, it's worth it if you know you had your opportunity to speak your 3 minutes as well. and this is how we get along. And so, Sanctuary City, that is the topic, and I say Sanctuary City of the unborn, not illegal immigrants. If you hadn't seen that, so council's going to take an action to further protect life. We've told everyone along the way we're going to do it, but I mean, we've taken a lot of friendly arrows from the people on our own right side that are saying like, well, you're not Christian enough, you're not pro-life enough. You're trying to water this down. And I'm like, no, I'm just doing everything that I can do.
It's not that easy.
Well, it's not my jurisdiction. So what goes on in New Mexico, I don't have the authority. So, I mean, I'm concerned with my city limits. And for me to restrict your ability to drive down a roadway in a civil matter after something happens and there's a dispute in front of a court and a judge, one, it's not enforceable, it's not applicable, and two, it's not my jurisdiction. To say, well, you can't drive on this roadway to get to that state, and I don't know your intentions unless you volunteer them, and then it's just not practical. You're not telling me that, but I'm taking nothing off the table in further protecting life, other than something that does nothing to protect life. And then I'm willing to move forward, and council's willing to move forward with me. And then here we go. Can we just agree that, like, this is the core issue, like we should protect, and this is a baby, not a fetus, right? And to a great extent, we allow one little minute detail to separate us at the core. And so good leadership comes with the willingness to constantly go around that mountain and come back to it. And so however long this takes, we're going to get it right. We're not going to do something just to do something. We're going to do the right thing. And so Sanctuary City will be a big win for us because we look different. We've done it totally different. And my critics are like, golly, you're such a rookie. You don't know better. You could have got all this done. You could have put this up on a Friday afternoon on a holiday weekend, voted it through on Tuesday.
You robbed Peter to pay Paul.
You'd have never had to have all this mess. Why are you doing this to the community? Well, one, I'm not doing this to the community, and two, I agreed to a principal value that I'm not willing to compromise on. I don't care if you think it's unprofessional looking.
So that's a win. I believe that's a win. It's a win with the new city manager. And does he have some high hopes? Like, is he?
Crazy high hopes, and then all sorts of resources. And he's done really well where he's at and is in his kind of career path. And he's going to get a huge budget with tons of employees and resources. He's going to have every opportunity. And he'll have one of the strongest and I think the hardest working council that we've ever had. I think this council works harder than any other council before them. And that's saying a lot because we've had some really good councils, but these guys are there constantly.
So what does his position look like? Like, what are some little things? What are some wins that you guys are looking at with him?
Well, the bar is also super low for him as well, so he ought to get a little bit of a honeymoon period. So all you got to do is go out there and fix a road. And, like, that's a big deal right now because we got so many that we just haven't done. I mean, so, we passed and have paid for a portion and now all of these roadway property taxes in Prop 1 monies back in 2016. And so that bond was issued and we have tens of millions of dollars sitting there on the sidelines that aren't fixing those roads and haven't for 7 years.
Yeah.
So all you got to do is get a guy who will show up and say, no, we're moving. Like, go do this, go do that. And then if he can do a really good job, then he's going to stretch that $1 million. Instead of it going $1 million for a quarter mile, it'll go $1 million for a half a mile because he's a good business guy.
Gotcha.
And so his position looks very difficult, very, very difficult on the inside. He's coming into a strong staff that many of those existing staff members could fulfill that position. And so you've got that leadership role there where he's going to have to get their willing support and for them to allow him to lead them. And so he's going to have to prove that out to the grit community that we live in. We just don't give you anything. You got to prove it. I mean, if I tell you I know how to shoe a horse, like you're not buying it until you see me do a couple.
Yeah.
And so
Actions speak louder than words.
for sure, and that's our culture. You're not getting away from that,
Mm-hmm.
and we would never want to. So he'll have he'll have a short honeymoon period like I did as mayor, and then he's going to get the full show us what you got and let us test it.
Thrown to the wolves.
Sure, and I think he's strong enough to survive. I think he'll make it.
How old of a guy is he?
You know, I didn't ask his age because I think we're not supposed to ask a lot of different things, but I'm going to tell you he's close to my age, 45, 46,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
Cool.
So young family, got a couple young kids.
He's ready to charge hell with a squirt gun.
Well, we're going to get him at least the super soaker. So, and he'll have a fire truck right behind him, so he'll be fine. But lots of wins at the city on the social side. Let me tell you one thing that was a huge win. When we got there, we had some velvet ropes, and we made sure there was a differentiation between those people that sit out there and get to come in here and listen, and us who get to speak and run the meeting. We took the velvet ropes down. We moved everybody off of the dais that wasn't an elected representative. That way, staff is staff. You know, these people, you didn't elect them. You know,
Did you have any pushback on that
Yeah, it was good.
for the ones who were?
Sure. I mean, I think it's just important, like, this is the right, and we did it quick, and we did it with humility. We didn't try to big boy it, and you know, the pushback was there, but we moved forward, and then everybody got okay with it.
I love it because in any organization, you're going to have what I call dead horses and sacred cows, right? Where it's, you know, and to go forward, you need horses that are alive, and not the sacred ones, but the ones that produce beef to put on the table. But there's some people that they just become sacred cows. Like, and even if it's a velvet rope, it's like, well, these have been here for so long, and it's just a rope, and it's just velvet, and it's ugly.
And it doesn't matter whether you're running a city meeting or you're running a church meeting or you're running the PTA.
Right.
It's all the same, just at different volumes or magnitudes.
And I think it's great you have a whole new council of people to get the vision, because, I mean, from a biblical aspect, I think about Moses going into the promised land, but he didn't even get there. It took Joshua, right? And so Joshua had to bring up a whole new set of leaders. And if it was still, well, Moses did it this way and Moses did it that way, you're never going to get anywhere. And you had to have some fresh eyes and some fresh vision. So that's good.
Yeah. We have we really, the first year doesn't have, I mean, it's just a lot of planting. So like if you say, what weeds have you pulled? I can show you. But like, where's your harvest at? Well, that's next year. You know, next year you'll see those roads turn. Next year you'll see that infrastructure get on. The budget was another big win.
Yeah, tell me about that. How was that a big win?
Well, you know, the budget took 7 days, 7.5 days.
Gosh.
Normally it takes 2.5, and you're on a very, like, a pretty skimpy overview. And so you just kind of take what they give you and, okay, looks good, go on. And then this year in the budget, we really understood how this functions. Where does this money come in? How does it go out? Everything from, existing vacant positions where, if you're running your department of 100 people, you always have 20 vacancies. You really don't have a department of 100 people. You have a budget for that. So what you've done is you've given yourself kind of a contingency or a margin of 20 people. So, how are we holding you accountable? And like, are you managing all 80 people well? Well, I don't know, because I'm comparing you to what 100 should do. So that, and then we reprioritized the entire budget. So we were way more geared monetarily towards quality of life issues. We had gotten away and neglected our public safety issues. So, I mean, we have people, some of these good ladies that are working at the call center. So it's, they're taking that emergency call and they're working 16-hour shifts and they're short-staffed, and we're paying them the same amount that somebody's getting paid to, take a drive-through order.
Sure.
And so the stress level is totally different. So moving those wages up and continuing, and even with our first responders right now, police and fire need to be our number one priority as an organization. And then the leadership that comes from that is I need that trash truck driver to believe that as well. I need him to know, like, hey, this is good for me too. I don't have to take something away from somebody else for me to have something. They can take their priority. Council can prioritize them. We're not going to get left behind. But that's just the way it is in any family budget.
Yeah.
And that's what we have down there is one big family budget.
Whatever's at the top, it trickles down to the bottom. I didn't even think about that, even down to the little people.
Well, and the biggest
They're not
issue,
really little people, but
no,
you know what I'm saying?
But the boot on the ground.
Yeah, the boot on the ground.
Yeah, and every position's important, and we're understaffed, and we're overworked to a certain extent in some departments, but we're mismanaged in a lot of ways because we think governmentally, and so we put this little trash pilot program in where we used subcontractors to go out and hit these alleys, and these were the cleanest alleys we've seen in decades. And then 6 weeks later, all the same trash is right back. And so, man, we fixed it. We weren't thinking governmentally. We didn't go create a whole new department to go down each alley. We used subs and we grew some small businesses. We provided some jobs. We grew this here, kind of the incentive, but then we had lack of enforcement. And so as a community, we're going to have to step up and say, no, you should have to pay for that trash in your alley, even if you didn't put it there. So you got to be responsible for your territory. And, we can only clean it up so many times before it just becomes mom doing your chores. And ultimately, I don't have a tax base and a budget for that.
Sure.
But people's minds flip.
And don't want to create one.
No, and they start thinking like, well, shouldn't the city take care of all that? Like, can't I just leave my trash anywhere? And my taxes pay for that? No, then your taxes pay for that trash to go into that dumpster. And you've got to put it in there if you want it hauled. So it's funny because all these civic things, I never would have been geared for. I was way more policy-minded on other things, but then a lot of where I spend my time is in troubleshooting a lot of these day-to-day problems.
And do you have, let me ask you this, where can you, I know even in position of shoeing horses or pastoring a church or whatever it is, do y'all look other places? Do y'all consult with like other cities of how they've done particular things? Look into those. I can't say we're going to do things like Borger, or we're not going. But we're also not going to do things like DFW.
That's right. Yeah, and that's the biggest problem, and also one of the best solutions. So they call it best practices, and I think that's great because when you find that sister city that looks like you, that they put this pilot program in and it functioned, then go and steal it from them. They'll give it to you. And if we figure something out, we'll give you ours. But it's very difficult to look at something that's not you. Mm-hmm. So let's take like Oklahoma City is a good example. So, man, we should be Oklahoma City. Look at how cool Bricktown is. Mm. Well, they also have the Thunder there. Like they have 1 million plus people. Like we are not them. Mm-hmm. So if you take that business model and you drop it right here, it's going to fail.
It's not ready.
You didn't have the foundation, you didn't have the resources, the structure. Plus, that's not something your sister city. So you've got to find those best practices that are real similar to what your problem is.
What you're working with.
Otherwise, you're once again back to kind of how we started this. You care what it looks like, and you've decided not your own identity, but you decided somebody else's identity was the one you wanted. Mm-hmm. So you've been spending your time to try to go and do what they do, try to go look like they look. And you've got to get comfortable. Amarillo, like the Yellow Rose of Texas looks different. Like we're different. We're not going to be DFW, and we don't want to be. But we've got to get comfortable in that identity of we like the size we are, we like the stuff that we have here. Now, can I go to, the world's best music festival in downtown Amarillo? No. Am I going to need to travel? Do I go to Austin or somewhere else for that? Yeah. And that's okay. Just because the world's biggest music festival is a good thing,
sure,
doesn't mean that your entire community has to have that good thing for you to be satisfied. Now, if we could get an HEB, I'd be okay with that.
Hey, come on. Nothing against United, but I'm with you.
A few things there that we could add to.
But also Buc-ee's is a win.
Buc-ee's is a win. Top Golf, man. I want a Top Golf.
Yeah, that would be fun.
We don't have that yet.
I don't know where we'd put that. Somewhere where the wind don't blow.
Well, I don't know where that is, but man, we could face it in the right direction. Let's say that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think that's it as best practices because, and we go to those places. Brandy and I, for an anniversary, we went to Savannah, Georgia. We love that area, and I remember flying back. I forget what time of the year it was, but I'm looking out. And I feel like I'm landing into the mission field,
yeah,
like somewhere in Africa. Like, can we turn this plane around and go back to where it's
yeah,
green and we
yeah.
got trees and all that? But I also don't feel that way because I believe Amarillo has the Yellow Rose of Texas. I believe it has the best people here
Yeah.
ever.
Well, and I mean, I get it, and so I gave some remarks at a function the other day, and I said, I know we have crystal clear blue water and white sandy beaches, and in the wintertime we boast the best ski slopes from 1,000 miles around. And then you kind of look at the
Switzerland.
audience, and you're like, oh no, wait, we don't have any of that. You know what our best resource is our human resource. You have the ability to live and grow your family around some of the best people on the face of the earth.
I agree.
And the small business climate here is one of the best small business climates you could ever hope for. And your corporate potential is not limited here. And then we're very healthy as a culture in the way in which we treat each other. There's a lot of things that you have to put up with and tolerate in other areas around the country that you don't tolerate here. We take a lot of that for granted because the wind blows 25 miles an hour and we're focused on that one thing. Why's it got to be so hot and windy? Well, what are the 50 things you're not dealing with?
Absolutely.
So I I can keep everybody geared that way and keep us moving, and I think that's good. And then that's what's great about Texas. You can still be a Texan and live in 10 different climates depending on which part you go to.
That's the truth.
So
I have one more question for you before we're done today. But you want to share any more wins that you can think of?
man, no, I think I'm better to keep working. I mean, the biggest win is what's coming next. So
I love it.
Yeah.
That's good. What is a question that you're never asked, but you always think, man, I wish they would ask this and not that?
Well, I don't know that I'm ever not asked all the questions. I mean, I feel like I get asked so many questions that like they don't leave any out. Here's probably the one question that I am asked that I do enjoy answering the most. It's the question that is like it's the hardest one to answer. It's like, man, why would you do this? So like once you figure this out, like this, so it's an unpaid position because I thought you made like $200,000. No, it's unpaid basically. I mean, there's $10 per meeting. It's like jury duty. That's just the charter. But then you're going to deal with all this, and you're going to lose some friends, and you're going to get all the problems that nobody else has fixed. And then your counsel, why would your counsel do this? And so, you try to kind of come up with like your political answer of, well, I really wanted to help fix public safety, and I believe that if we have these kinds of, roads, that helps. And so those are good things, but those are logistical reasons of like, well, these are my three things that I want to talk about in my talking points because I'm running to get elected. But after you get elected, then you're there and you're faced with, okay, I just got myself into this. So one, am I going to doubt my abilities to do it? I never really have. I've never had one time where I went down there and I said, I just don't know if I'm up for it. What I've had is I've gone down there plenty of times and I've thought to myself, I don't know how I'm going to do this and do everything else I'm already committed to. And so there's a great level of trust of like, man, Lord, I'm just going to trust that you work all this out and you give me the time and the energy. Because I can't be everywhere and I can't juggle it. But the main question to like, why would you do this is like I had to find in myself, like, what is my personal vision? What's my personal goal? And I told you earlier, like, I really want to hear when all this is done, not just this season of my life, but my entire life when it's over. I really want to hear like, well done, good and faithful servant. And so that faithful servant part to me is really stuck. And so I was telling y'all earlier, like I looked it up, and in Latin it's servus fidelis. And so, I mean, who doesn't love something that sounds cool, like
Yeah.
it should be on the
It's
side
manly,
of a
too.
battleship?
Absolutely.
So that Servus Fidelis motto to me has really kind of stuck, and it's so cool because it's not just a cool phrase or something you say, it's something you're going to have to walk out. And I'm tested in it. And so, like, one, am I truly being a faithful servant doing this for the right reasons, or am I going to let this thing change me? And over the next year, y'all going to see it, and you can't hide it. Everybody knows. Or am I going to be true to myself and continue to serve and esteem you as greater than myself? And so if I will, he who seeks to save his life will lose it. And he who loses his life for my sake, will truly find it. Well, for his sake, like, am I really willing to be a faithful servant? And then it just requires that trust of no matter what happens, I'm just willing to trust and I'm willing to go and put in the work. And if it fails tomorrow, okay, I'll deal with it.
Right.
So that's the one question of it. It actually has an answer. So, I think that the way we live in this life will echo for all eternity, and it matters how you live in this life because it matters how I treat you and how you treat me. Doesn't matter how much money we make. I don't define success on I want this many wins, or I'd like to, become this person at the state level or the federal level, or I want to be the biggest builder, or I'd like to make $1 million. None of that is success, man. All that does is continue to focus you in. And June is Pride Month. Well, I'd love to have Humility Month.
Yeah.
Like, what does pride really say? It says, I'm somebody. I'm special. I have this. It's about me. I want y'all to know, who I am. I need to express myself in a sexual way, and I want that sexual identity to become my identity. What an awful way to live your life. My message is the exact opposite.
Well, pride comes, then a fall comes.
Sure. But the humility comes from, like, you know what? I'm going to serve you whether I agree with you or not.
That's
and
it.
my role is to do the best that I can because I really want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. It's like my dad, I got blessed with a good, earthly father.
Same.
I don't want to disappoint my dad. So, like, I don't quit things because, like, I don't want to disappoint him. But in life, I have my heavenly father who's never disappointed me, not one time.
That's right.
So I don't want to disappoint him. And so if I hear those words, that's the greatest, like, definition of success for me.
Absolutely. When I think about the four faces in the book of Revelation, that's one of my favorites. When John is looking, behold, I see a sea of glass, and around it's four faces. I see the face of, what is it? It goes the lion, the ox, the man,
eagle.
the man, and the eagle. Yeah, the last one's the eagle in the book of John. But the mark is ox. Cast all our care on him, for he cares for us. It says in Isaiah 53, it says that he's that beast of burden for us. And as you look through the book of Mark, you see him as the lowly servant. And what I love about it is it says that he didn't come to be served, but he came to serve. And I feel the same way at the end of my life, that I didn't come to be seen, but I came that he would be made known through our life. And do I mess up?
Yeah.
You bet. I get an F sometimes. But what's great about the Lord is when you take a test, if you fail it, you always get to take it again.
That's right. Sometimes it's an open book test too. Like, you shouldn't have failed it. It was right there.
Right.
You just didn't. You wouldn't.
You
read
didn't
it.
want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I would do, I'd love to come back some other time and talk about, like, with everything that I just said. Somebody out there listening to this is like, well, you can't do that. Like, you just spiritualized a separated position. We have the freedom from religion in this country, and I'm like, no, you have the freedom of religion. You don't have the freedom from it. Well, we have separation of church and state. I'd love to come back and tell you, like, here's the right role of government, and here's how an elected representative should lead, and why faith does matter, and where values come from, and that moral law that we all agree on. And I think that that's the best balance of walking that out.
Well, I'd love to sit down with you about the historical background. I mean, we got a document that's 250 years old. You look at places like Argentina and Venezuela, where they're going on their 17th revolution in 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got the same document that has worked. And why, you go back to our founding fathers, history of this land was on the principles and teachings of the Word of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah,
And
we can get into that one.
church and state, I mean, people make a big deal, but if you really study it, it's to keep the state out of the church.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, and that phrase of from or of is big. Like, do you have the freedom of, or the freedom from? And so we flipped it, and I'm told multiple times, even in conversations we're having up in on the dais, like, well, we heard y'all mention God, and we don't know why y'all are still saying prayers, and like, if you're going to pray, you got to let everybody pray, and we're like, we do. And so it's just the right role of a good leader. And you don't want a leader that's selfish. You don't want a leader that's greedy. You don't want a leader that's dishonest. Well, those are character traits that are a lack of value.
Sure.
So where do those values come from? And I enjoy talking about that because I enjoy that little bit of that argument of like, how would you like, what exactly would you like me to exercise from? Because we agree on all of the actual values. We agree on the morals. You just don't want me to identify my motivation for holding those morals. That makes you feel more comfortable. Well, then get uncomfortable. Because the truth is the truth, and you've got to have that vision. And then, nothing says uncomfort brings disrespect. Like, I don't feel disrespected by that cold water when I get in it, but it's very uncomfortable. And so discomfort's good, man. So I love being with you, and then glad to come back and do it again. And, hopefully this Cody guy can edit this and make it sound better than what it was.
Amen. I think we good. I think that's an open invitation to go. I'd love to go down that road. But today I just wanted, as one leader to another, I wanted the people of Amarillo, but also to people inside of this church, just to celebrate those things. Let's think on things that are true and noble and honorable, all of those things in Philippians chapter 4. Because what I see that is he's saying, even before that in 3, he said, following the pattern that I'm in. I'm in a heavy spot, but still, God's still on the throne, and he will supply all of my needs according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. Obviously, I'm always going to go down the spiritual aspect of this, but I'm excited you're in the spot that you're in, and I believe we're going to go.
Man, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity, and then celebrate those small victories with us as we get them, and then hold us accountable to those failures, and we'll keep working.
Absolutely. All right. Good to have you on here.
Hey, man. Appreciate you.
You bet. All right.